Good day, everyone. Today's 10 interesting facts is about Neelix from Star Trek Voyager. Neelix usually brought a smile to my face, and I have good memories of him. So, now, let's get into it. Number 1. Neelix grew up with his parents, his sisters, and his brothers on Rhinax, a moon of the Talaxian homeworld, with the most temperate climate in the entire Talaxian system. Behind their house was a large forest, in which he and his sisters would go exploring every day. His favorite sister was always Alexia. He lived near the Rhinax marshlands, where the summers were the hottest in the sector. Number 2. When he was young, a huge plasma storm passed through the Talaxian system and blocked the sun for weeks. For 2 years, Neelix worked with an orbital tether team on Rhinax. He didn't actually serve on one, but worked heavily with scale models. For a number of years, the Hakonians were at war with the Talaxians, and at some point the Talaxian government called on Neelix to serve, but he went to Talax to avoid military duty because he felt the war was wrong. While he was on Talax in 2356, the Hakonians unleashed the Metron Cascade on Rhinax, whereby in the blink of an eye, Rhinax was enveloped in a deadly cloud. The moon, that once had the most temperate climate in the entire system, was turned into one endless, frigid night, killing more than 300,000, including his family. The day after the cascade, Talax surrendered to the Hakonian order. Number 3. After the death of his family and the destruction of his home world and what was left under alien rule, Neelix left the system to move on with his life. He served on a mining colony for a while and worked for 2 years as an engineer's assistant aboard a Trebellian freighter, where he became well versed in warp theory. Neelix also spent 6 years aboard a Talaxian garbage scow, a duty that familiarized him with waste management. While Neelix was aboard, the scow once ran into a theta radiation field that disabled the ship's propulsion. He and the other crew members of the scow had no choice but to remain where they were and were barely alive when they were rescued. Number 4. Eventually, Neelix would become a merchant and buy his own cargo ship, the Biaxel. When he first laid his eyes on it, he thought she was ugly, but eventually couldn't imagine life without her. At some point, Neelix befriended fellow Talaxian Wixaban. Although the two had run-in with obedient authorities, Neelix was able to escape thanks to Wixaban, who was unfortunately caught and forced to serve a brutal prison sentence. Neelix also befriended a Talaxian man named Laxith, and while the two may have conducted some little bit illegal business at some time, Laxith had cleaned up by 2372 and was working as a communications master for a Talaxian convoy. At some point, Neelix sold plaques and sensors to the Kazon Ogla. Number 5. At some point, Neelix discovered a debris field near the Ocampa homeworld and claimed it for himself. When he was discovered there in 2371 by the crew of the Starfleet vessel Voyager, Neelix told them that he didn't mind their presence there as long as they didn't take his debris. Their Starfleet crew were searching for several missing officers, who Neelix suspected may have been transported by the caretaker to a city beneath the surface of the Ocampa homeworld. Neelix offered to serve as the crew's guide and took them to the Ocampa homeworld, which was controlled by the Kazon sect led by Jabin. Water being incredibly scarce in the region, Neelix proposed to trade water from Voyager for the release of an Ocampan prisoner named Kes, who could lead the crew to the underground city. Even though the Kazon refused the trade, the crew members were able to escape with Kes, who was actually Neelix's lover. After rescuing the crewmen who were indeed underground, both Neelix and Kes joined Voyager's crew, and Neelix was assigned his position as a guide to the Delta Quadrant, since the region was largely unexplored by Starfleet. Number 6. Aboard Voyager, Neelix served as a chef, special consultant for the Delta Quadrant, and occasionally as a self-appointed chief morale officer. Captain Kathyrn Janeway gave Neelix the unofficial title of ambassador when he proved to have a flair for diplomacy. Number 7. On one of his first official away missions, in which he prepared for a week studying dilithium geophysics, Neelix's lungs were removed by the Vidian's weapon. There was no way to replicate new lungs for Neelix, since Talaxian lungs were too complex to be replicated, because they were attached to his upper spinal column. So the doctor was forced to replace Neelix's lungs with holographic replicas. The flaw in the plan was that Neelix could not move, and would thus be forced to stay confined in a restraint until real replacement lungs were available. When the Vidians who stole Neelix's lungs were found, they were able to devise a way for the doctor to transplant one of Kes's lungs into Neelix. The procedure was a success. Number 8. Neelix was a cook and ran the ship's mess hall. He was fond of experimenting and often tried to adapt crew members' recipes with the limited ingredients available in the Delta Quadrant, although they often complained about the results. Neelix served as an engineering assistant and tried to learn more about the field to be more useful to his crew. He was able to defeat a group of criminals with a canister of leaking warp plasma. As part of his self-appointed duties as morale officer, Neelix familiarized himself with the various traditions and cultures of crew members. He also enjoyed Talaxian holidays and established an annual celebration of Prixin aboard the ship, asking Tuvok to read the traditional salutation one year. Number 9. In 2378, Voyager discovered a group of Talaxians living inside an asteroid located in the Delta Quadrant. Neelix helped them defend themselves against a group of miners that wanted them to leave the ore-rich asteroid. It was also at this time that Captain Janeway offered him a chance to serve as Starfleet's permanent ambassador in the Delta Quadrant. He accepted the position and soon left the starship to live with the other Talaxians inside the asteroid. Neelix stayed with Dexa, a widow, and her son Brax. He kept the con badge he was issued as a souvenir of his time on Voyager. Number 10. Neelix also continued to keep in contact with the crew of Voyager. Following his departure, he suggested to 7 of 9 that a picnic might be a suitable option for her third date with Commander Chakotay. Later, Neelix also played a game of Catascot with her. During the game, 7 of 9 thanked Neelix for his earlier suggestion. The Talaxian informed 7 of 9 that he was considering making a marriage proposal to Dexa. Their game came to an abrupt end when 7 detected large levels of neutrino emissions on long-range sensors and told Neelix that she would have to contact him at the usual time during the following day. I do hope you liked the video. Neelix really was a valued part of the crew, and I really wish he would have gotten to see Earth, but it seemed like he was very happy with his new family. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video before you go. Thank you, take care, and have a great day. Good day, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is about Kes from Star Trek Voyager, and even though she only spent 3 seasons on the show, she left a lasting impact. So, let's get into it. Number 1. Kes was born on Ocampa in 2369. She belonged to a species that had telepathic abilities and a normal lifespan of only 9 years. Kes's father, to whom she was very close to, was considered the greatest inspiration of her life, died not long after her first birthday. She still thought about him and often felt his presence when she needed guidance. Number 2. When she was born, her mother expressed a wish that someday she would see the sun. Like most Ocampa, Kes was brought up underground, as her planet's surface had become a barren wasteland due to a catastrophic event and was unsuitable for habitation. She was frustrated that the Ocampa had been dependent on the caretaker for so long that they couldn't even think for themselves anymore. She knew that before they had given up their independence for comfort and security, they had been a people with full command of their mind's abilities they had lost because they stopped using them and began to just take what they were given. Kes did not want to walk the path the caretaker had set for her and other Ocampa anymore. She believed her people needed to evolve, and that they could only do so by learning to survive on their own and on their own terms. Number 3. Her yearning to see the outside world led her to leave the city in 2371 through some ancient channels. However, upon reaching the surface, she was captured by members of the Kazon Ogla sect, who had established a camp near the city. There, she was mistreated and tortured for information regarding the entrance to the city. The Kazon were a crude and rather technologically deficient race, and finding a way to the fruitful underground oasis of the Ocampa city would have provided them with abundant resources. Number 4. During her time with the Ogla, she met the Talaxi Neelix, and the two fell in love. Neelix promised to rescue her. He managed this with the aid of Captain Janeway's USS Voyager and Chakotay's Maquis crew that had been transported to the Delta Quadrant by the caretaker's array. In return, Kes agreed to help them retrieve crew members that had been sent to the Ocampa city for care after the experiments the caretaker had done on them. After the array had been destroyed by Janeway, so the Ocampa would not fall victim to the ruthless Kazon, Kes and Neelix asked to join the Voyager crew on their journey, promising to serve the ship and its crew as valuable crew members. Number 5. As one of her first acts on Voyager, Kes volunteered to establish a hydroponics garden in Cargo Bay 2 in order to provide fresh fruits and vegetables to allow more variety in meals for the crew. Her requirement for the soil for her garden from sickbay started her friendship and sympathy with the Doctor. Kes quickly settled into a life aboard Voyager and began growing vegetables in her hydroponic bay. She also began to study medicine under the Doctor in order to become the Doctor's nurse. When Neelix was attacked by the Vidians and they removed his lungs, she donated one of her own to save his life. After the operation, the Doctor allowed her to commence training to become his medical assistant. Number 6. Soon, Kes started to help the Doctor in sickbay. She was shocked at the way the Doctor was treated by the crew. After explaining the situation to Captain Janeway, the captain agreed with her. Janeway told the Doctor that he was a member of the crew, and she gave him control of his deactivation of his program. The Doctor found Kes' intellectual curiosity intriguing, and in the course of instructing her in her medical studies, he postulated that Kes had an eidetic memory. Number 7. Kes's native telepathic powers continued to grow during her time in space, and she received training from Tuvok to control her powers. When Voyager encountered another group of Ocampa and the entity Subsperia, Kes's powers increased so fast that she began to lose control of them, incinerating the hydroponics bay and nearly killing Tuvok due to her new power of pyrokinesis. Fortunately, she saw how twisted these Ocampa had become and used her powers to fight them off. With the escape of superiority, her powers returned to their normal levels. Number 8. Voyager entered the core space of Borg and stumbled across the Borg Species 8472 war. As a result of the telepathic nature of Species 8472, Kes began to experience visions of the future, and later began to communicate with the race. When they realized her nature, Species 8472 began reading Kes's memories. The communication ceased when the species retreated from the Delta Quadrant. Only a few days later, Kes began to undergo a massive surge in her mental powers. Although it is theorized that the exposure to Species 8472 caused the changes, there was little evidence for this. For whatever reason, Kes became telekinetic and was able to carry out delicate surgical procedures using only her mind. Unfortunately, she rapidly started to destabilize at the subatomic level and was causing massive damage to Voyager as a result. Taking a Class II shuttle, she left the ship to explore her new condition, and, as she left the corporeal world behind, pushed Voyager out of Borg space, 9,500 light-years closer to Earth as a parting gift. Number 9. In the original sequence of events in 2376, Voyager received a distress call from a small ship. Sensors revealed that the ship had one Ocampan life form on board. It was an aged Kes, who requested to beam aboard Voyager. When Janeway questioned her motives, Kes responded by ramming Voyager with her ship and boarding the Starfleet vessel. In her old age, Kes had forgotten she had chosen to leave Voyager and thought the crew had abandoned her when she became too troublesome. Subsequently, she hunted down Voyager, seeking revenge. She made her way to engineering, using her powers to cause extensive damage along the way. When she reached engineering, Kes murdered B'Elanna Torres and used the warp core's energy to enhance her powers and travel back to 2371, shortly after Voyager had become trapped in the Delta Quadrant. She attempted to prevent her younger self from developing her powers, making a deal with the Vidians to attack and capture the ship while taking the younger Kes back to Ocampa. This was thwarted by Captain Janeway. Number 10. In the new version of 2376, Kes once again assaulted the ship, but Janeway was able to divert the crew from Kes's path, minimizing the damage she inflicted on the ship. When she reached engineering, she found the warp core offline. A hologram that Kes had recorded of herself before leaving Voyager was activated. The holographic image reminded her that she was responsible for her own fate. Kes responded emotionally and ceased hostilities. Janeway offered her a place on the crew, but she refused, opting instead to return to her home world. I do hope you liked this video of Kes. What's your favorite memory of Kes on Voyager? Let me know in the comments below. Consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Thank you, take care, and have a great day. Good day, everyone. Today's 10 interesting facts is on the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager. Besides 7 of 9's character, I really enjoyed the Doctor's character on Voyager. I would love to see him return at some point, maybe on Picard Season 2? Anyways, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get more of these videos as they come out. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. The Doctor, or the Emergency Medical Hologram, was an EMH Mark I, created by Dr. Louis Zimmerman on Jupiter Station, and was activated in 2371. He eventually became the Chief Medical Officer for Voyager, as the original Chief Medical Officer passed away when Voyager was sent across the galaxy to the Delta Quadrant. Lieutenant Barclay also worked on the project, testing the EMH's interpersonal skills. Number 2. The EMH Mark I, upon which the Doctor's program was based, was listed as Emergency Medical Holographic Program AK-1 Diagnostic and Surgical Subroutine Omega 323 in Voyager's memory. It was developed by a team of engineers to be an emergency supplement to the medical team on starships. Only meant to run for a maximum of 1,500 hours, the program included little personality and interpersonal skills. However, it was capable of treating any known injury or disease, as it was programmed with the medical knowledge of every member world in the Federation, and that of over 5 million surgical procedures. His program even became capable of learning and adapting in order to create new medical treatments. Number 3. The Doctor's first few weeks as a full-time medic on Voyager were not easy for him. He had no control over his activation subroutines, so anyone could activate or deactivate his program solely at their choice. Most of their crew considered him merely a computer program or a tool, and treated him accordingly. He in turn was curt and rude to them, lacking empathy and bedside manner, and he was unhappy that he was being used to perform menial medical tasks. He felt that his perfection and comparative medical genius were not appreciated. When developing or performing exceptional medical procedures, he often cynically remarked that anywhere else performing such kind of procedure would have won him a prestigious award. He was also upset at being the last one to be made aware of events that were not directly within his purview, such as the Maquis crew joining Voyager and Neelix and Kes joining the crew. Number 4. It is not entirely clear when he became Chief Medical Officer. There's no on-screen scene where he's promoted. In the pilot episode, it is established that most of the medical crew is dead, thus needing replacement. In the following episode, there's a scene where Captain Janeway is discussing the issue of replacing the senior officers who died, including the Chief Medical Officer. When Neelix suggests the EMH to replace the Chief Medical Officer, Tuvok and Torres give reasons why the EMH would not be sufficient for the job. Then they go right into discussing training people as medics. The topic is not discussed again until the 6th episode of the first season, when a crew member is rude towards the Doctor and he rebuffs by saying he is the Chief Medical Officer and should be treated with respect. Thus, it would seem the Doctor is promoted to Chief Medical Officer off-screen sometime between Episode 2 and Episode 6 of the first season. Number 5. In 2373, he assisted in stopping Henry Starling's plan to steal a time ship which had accidentally traveled into the past, acquiring a mobile emitter that permitted him movement beyond the limits of Voyager's sickbay and holodeck after Starling stole him from Voyager to question him about their presence in this timeline, transferring him to the mobile emitter to make it easier to threaten his existence. Having escaped Starling, the Doctor rescued Chakotay and Torres from survivalists, returned to Voyager, and enjoyed his newfound freedom from sickbay, the emitter proving simple for the Doctor to use, while also allowing him to return to sickbay. Number 6. Captain Janeway awarded the Doctor the Starfleet Medical of Commendation for his part in repelling raiders who wanted to strip Voyager of essential components. This predicament was both incited and resolved successfully thanks to the Doctor's experimentation with introducing daydreaming to his program. The aliens hacked into the Doctor's program, but due to his daydreams, they were given an exaggerated image of Voyager's defenses and were tricked into retreating. In light of his accomplishments, Captain Janeway gave permission for research into the creation of an emergency command hologram to take command of the ship if the senior staff were ever immobilized. Number 7. The Doctor decided to create a holographic family, Doctor's Family Program Beta Rho, in Voyager's holodeck in 2373, using the name Kenneth for himself. They consisted of a wife, Charlene, and 2 children, a son, Jeffrey, and a daughter, Belle. Number 8. The Doctor took keen interest in opera, frequently practicing his singing with a holographic soprano. Singing was not his only creative outlet for the Doctor, though. He worked hard to create a holographic novel called Photons Be Free, based on an EMH on a starship vortex and the treatment he faced from the organic members of the crew. The Doctor also was something of a shutterbug. He enjoyed taking holo imager to record his experiences, times with his friends, and away missions. Number 9. In the aborted timeline, where Voyager took 23 years to return to the Alpha Quadrant, 2 weeks prior to the 10th anniversary of the ship's return, the Doctor married a human woman named Lana, and even took the name of her grandfather, Joe. He remained the personal physician of Admiral Janeway, who credited her fine health to his exceptional care over the years, and also he continued to visit Tuvok to monitor him. Number 10. The Doctor's last action on the ship was to help deliver his goddaughter, Muriel Paris, while in the Borg transwarp hub. As the crew were contacted by Starfleet ships, the Doctor alerted Muriel's father, Tom Paris, that there's someone here who'd like to say hello. I do hope you enjoyed the video about the Doctor. He was certainly a fascinating character, and I really do hope we get to see him again in the future. Take care, and have an awesome day. Good day, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is on 10 interesting facts about B'Elanna Torres from Star Trek Voyager. Intelligent, beautiful, and had a chip on her shoulder. She made a great addition to Voyager. So, let's get into it. Number 1. B'Elanna was born in 2349 on the Federation colony Keswick 4 to John Torres, a human father, and Maril, a Klingon mother. She spent much of her life on Keswick 4, but because relations between the Klingon Empire and the Federation were not too cordial at the time, B'Elanna and her mother were the only Klingons on the planet. Although none of the other colonists voiced any negative opinions of B'Elanna, she felt that she and her mother were perceived differently, a feeling that made her uneasy and which she found hard to shake. B'Elanna's alienation and the roots of her insecurities had their foundations at an early age in her life, where she was teased for her appearance as a result of her Klingon heritage. Number 2. The alienation continued when her own father began distancing himself from them. At one time, when B'Elanna was on a camping trip with her father, her Uncle Carl, and her cousins Elizabeth, Dean, and Michael, she overheard her father complaining about her, likening her mood and angry behavior to that of her mother Maril, and that he had a hard time living with two Klingons. John Torres finally left the Federation colony and traveled back to Earth in 2354, when B'Elanna was 5 years old, never to return to his family again. For months after, B'Elanna cried herself to sleep every night, wondering what had made her father leave and if it was her fault. After her father left, B'Elanna and her mother lived on Kronos, the Klingon home world, for some time. Eventually, her mother pulled B'Elanna out of Federation school she was attending and took her to a Klingon monastery in order to teach her honor and discipline. Number 3. One of Torres' favorite foods as a child was banana pancakes with maple syrup, which her grandmother would make for her. That beloved meal always put a smile on B'Elanna's face. Her other favorite foods included potato salad with paprika and fried chicken. One time, Maril took her to visit the Sea of Kathyrn, where she almost drowned. After her mom resuscitated her, she told B'Elanna about the Klingon beliefs of the afterlife, Stovokor, and Grethol. Number 4. Beginning in 2366, Torres attended Starfleet Academy, where she participated in the Academy Decathlon team. She later admitted that after quitting, the track and field coach was furious with me. She also had to dodge several punches in the lab, which Chakotay later joked about, saying, "Only you, B'Elanna, would start a brawl in Astrotheory 101. Interstellar history was, according to Torres, the one subject I almost failed at the Academy. Also among her Academy training was EV suit simulations. She thought they felt peaceful, like floating in the womb. But years later, in actual practice, she said she felt a little sick to her stomach. During her time at the Academy, B'Elanna dated Maxwell Burke. However, their relationship did not last long. Number 5. Ultimately, B'Elanna had a hard time fitting in, often getting into trouble with instructors and faculty. Within 2 years at the Academy, she was suspended once and had 4 disciplinary hearings against her. Even though quite a brilliant student and promising engineer, she eventually dropped out of the Academy in 2368 at the age of 19. She was later surprised to learn that Professor Chapman thought she was one of the most promising students he had ever taught and was disappointed when she dropped out. He had placed a note in her permanent record saying he would support her if she ever reapplied. Number 6. After leaving the Academy, an angry young Torres eventually joined the Maquis in 2370, after former Starfleet officer Chakotay saved her life. From then on, she formed a close friendship with Chakotay, and she became one of his most trusted friends. At that point in her life, the Maquis became the closest thing to family she had ever had. Fighting the Cardassians gave her the outlet she needed in dealing with her violent emotions. To help deal with her explosive and often violent temper, Chakotay taught her many Native American and spiritual techniques to help calm her emotions. He even trained her to speak her animal guide, and to his surprise, she was the only person he'd ever known who tried to kill her animal guide. B'Elanna considered Seska to be her best friend, long before finding out that Seska was really a Cardassian agent of the Obsidian Order. Number 7. In 2371, when their ship the Valjean was being chased into the Badlands by Gul-Evek's flagship, the Vitar, it was mysteriously transported to the Delta Quadrant by the caretaker. After the crew was subjected to a painful examination, the crews of Voyager and the Maquis vessel were returned to their ships, with the exception of Torres and Starfleet Ensign Harry Kim. Those two were sent to the caretaker to the Accompin settlement beneath the surface of the planet, where they were told they were dying and needed medical care. Torres refused to cooperate and attempted to escape. Both Torres and Kim were rescued by the crews of Voyager and the Maquis. The Valjean was later destroyed, and its crew, including Torres, joined the Federation starship USS Voyager. Number 8. Torres was initially assigned the provisional rank of Lieutenant Junior Grade. Torres had difficulty getting along with the temporary chief engineer, Joe Carey, to the point of breaking his nose over plasma conduits. She was recommended as a replacement of chief engineer by Chakotay, as the original chief engineer was killed by the damage caused by the caretaker's displacement wave. After Voyager became trapped in a quantum singularity, Torres proved her skills to Janeway and earned her respect. Janeway then made her chief engineer over Carey. Torres' quarters were on Deck 9, Section 12. Number 9. B'Elanna developed a special friendship with Harry Kim. She referred to him as Starfleet upon their first meeting, and had continued to do so off and on over their 7-year journey. The two would often work together on projects and often socialized together when off duty. Although their initial confrontation didn't end well, B'Elanna and Seven of Nine often agitated each other over the 4 years they were together on Voyager. They did respect each other's technical skills and high standards and respect for each other when it mattered the most. Number 10. She wed Paris after interstellar starship race that Irina, one of the participants, tried to sabotage and thereby destroy the peace in the area. She had joined Paris in the race because she wished to share his interests. A bomb was planted on their ship, but they were able to eject it in time. They married after the race. She again confronted her Klingon side when she became pregnant. She was afraid to have a baby because she thought that the baby would suffer as she had during childhood. She found out that the child had a deformed spine that the doctor could correct genetically in the womb. When she saw a projection of the child and discovered it had Klingon ridges, she questioned whether she wanted the child. She asked the doctor to make further genetic changes so that the child would not have Klingon features. She falsely altered a diagnostic test that convinced the doctor that changes were necessary. Paris found out about the false report and stopped the doctor from performing the procedure. He discovered that she blamed herself for her father having left her because she was Klingon. Paris convinced her that he would never do that and wanted a child just like her. She believed him and accepted the pregnancy. During the final battle with the Borg, which led to Voyager's return home, Torres gave birth to their daughter Muriel. I do hope you like this video. I think B'Elanna was played perfectly in Voyager, and I even had a little crush on her right from the beginning. So what did you think of B'Elanna? Let me know in the comments. Take care, and have a great day. Good day, everyone. Today's video is on Tom Paris from Star Trek Voyager. I personally really enjoyed this character on Voyager. Consider subscribing to the channel if you like these videos. But now, let's get into it. Number 1. Thomas Eugene Paris was the son of a Starfleet Admiral Owen Paris. Growing up, Paris often felt inadequate due to the pressure his father put on him to excel and feeling like a failure as a result. The alienation continued throughout his adulthood to the point where Tom would just ignore his father altogether, tuning him out, to what he referred to as yet another holiday sermon about the Prime Directive. Throughout Tom's life and career at Starfleet, his father remained tough and remote, telling him, for instance, that crying was a sign of weakness. Crying, incidentally, was the one thing Tom recalled doing the most as a teenager. Number 2. Paris had a desire for adventure while growing up, feeling he had to climb the largest tree and scale the tallest cliffs. As a buff of early human missions into space, he also memorized the recording from Friendship 1 probe and built a model of it as a young boy. While he considered most of his early family to be rather ordinary people, referring to them as salt-of-the-earth type people, with some farmers and colonists, he held great respect for one of his ancestors, a pilot who flew the first orbital glider over the lower Martian plateau. Tom himself had a passion for piloting also, which he really discovered at the age of 8, when his father took him to a trip in an S-class shuttle. When he was 16 years old, Tom took his father's shuttle out for a joyride, ending up frying all the relays and landing at the bottom of Lake Tahoe, where it sat for years to come. Number 3. Despite this, Tom's first love was the sea. He was obsessed with stories about the ocean. Due to this love, Tom had planned to join the Federation Naval Patrol after high school. However, his father had other plans for him and did not understand his son's passion. As far as he was concerned, the only ship Tom was ever going to serve on had to have a Starfleet insignia on it. Eventually, Tom applied to Starfleet Academy. Number 4. During his first year at the Academy, Paris fell in love for the first time with a girl named Susie Crabtree. When she broke off the relationship, he broke out in hives, unable to get out of bed for weeks, and almost failed stellar cartography. He spent much of the year in a daze, and even years later he thought of her from time to time, never really being able to completely forget her. During his second semester at the Academy in 2360s, Paris chose Marseille, France, as the site of his physical training. There, he frequented a bistro called Sandrine's, where he once met a girl by the name of Ricky. Advanced subspace geometry was the only class at the Academy in which he actually paid attention to. He did hone his natural aptitude for piloting skills on craft large and small, and he proved adept at hollow engineering. He once told Neelix that his father was the instructor of his course in survival strategies, and that he gave Tom a mere B-. Paris managed to graduate from Starfleet Academy after a stormy 4 years with a major in astrophysics. Number 5. Upon graduating from the Academy, Paris was assigned to the USS Exeter. His career in Starfleet was short-lived, however, and ended after he was involved in covering up a pilot error which had led to the death of 3 fellow officers at Celtic Prime. Despite later telling the truth, he was discharged from Starfleet following the incident. He once sarcastically remarked that the ghosts of those 3 dead officers came to me in the middle of the night and taught me the true meaning of Christmas, when he was asked why he had finally confessed. Number 6. After being expelled from Starfleet, Paris wandered around looking for a fight, and found it as working as a mercenary for the Maquis. He was with them for a few weeks before he was captured on his first mission, convicted of treason, and sentenced to 18 months imprisonment at the Federation Penal Settlement in New Zealand. While he was serving time at a Federation penal colony for his involvement with the Maquis, Paris received a visit from Captain Kathyrn Janeway, who had served her first post out of the Academy under Owen, when he was captain of the USS Al-Batani. He gave him the opportunity to redeem himself, as well as be paroled by participating in the mission. His assignment was to help track down the Maquis ship Valjean, which had disappeared in the Badlands with Janeway security officer Tuvok, who had been undercover. After some initial hesitation, Paris decided to take this opportunity and join Captain Janeway on Voyager. He was very cynical when he asked to join. He couldn't care less about the crew of that ship and only agreed to be brought on board as a Starfleet observer after being assured that, when it was over, he would be cut loose and Janeway would give him a favorable report at his next review. Number 7. Despite rather shaky beginnings and a crew that wondered whether he could be trusted when things got tough, Paris was nonetheless able to gradually redeem himself in the eyes of many. On Ocampa, he saved Chakotay's life, resulting in Chakotay greatly changing his sentiments towards Paris and beginning to respect him. In addition to saving Chakotay's life, he also helped rescue B'Elanna Torres and Harry Kim, who had been underground in the Ocampa city, and he struck a meaningful friendship with shy Harry Kim, who had just graduated from the academy and was on his first deep space assignment. During a battle between Voyager and the Kazon Ogla starship, Janeway posted Paris to the con. After the Caretaker's array was destroyed, Paris was officially designated as Flight Control Officer, with his Starfleet rank of Lieutenant Junior grade reinstated. He was assigned the additional job of field medic for the Doctor, when an assessment for medical replacements was brought forth, as Paris had taken 2 semesters of biochemistry at the Academy. Number 8. Among all his relationships with the crew, Tom had developed a especially close relationship with young Harry Kim. Their friendship was put to the test when they were accused of terrorist activities they did not commit and were held at the Kathyrn Maximum Security Detention Facility, more than 300 meters underground. There, they were controlled by a neural implant called the clamp, which induced paranoia and violence. Even though Captain Janeway was able to prove their innocence, the authorities refused to release them. The 2 men suffered horribly in the prison, and the stress of the prison and the neural implants did take its toll on both of them. When Paris once suffered from delirium, dismantled a tool Kim was going to use for an escape attempt, Kim, enraged at what Paris had done, lost control and almost killed him. Kim was able to stop himself at the last minute, but realized he had gone too far. The 2 men fought for each other, however, and Kim nursed Paris back to health after he was stabbed by another inmate. This incident marked an important step in their friendship, as Tom realized the kind of friend he had found in Harry, who not only saved his life, but also stood by him at his worst. Number 9. In 2375, Paris had heavily lobbied for and finally built the Delta Flyer, a shuttle of its own design intended to be used in the increasingly hostile Delta Quadrant. Paris married B'Elanna Torres during the first running of the Antarian Transstellar Rally, proposing as the shuttle came close to suffering a warp core breach. Its destruction was averted after the warp core was ejected into a Class J nebula containing the antimatter explosion. The 2 of them used the Delta Flyer for their honeymoon. During a final battle with the Borg, which enabled Voyager to return home, Paris's first child was born, a girl named Meryl. Although he was unable to present at her birth, as he was needed as Voyager's helm while the ship was trying to get back home, he was contacted by the Doctor, who told him, "There's someone down here who would like to say hello." Number 10. Tom Paris had a variety of interests, but many of them focused on 20th century North American culture, specifically the latter half of the century's pop culture. However, his knowledge of general history was slightly more limited. He also possessed considerable knowledge of the early Mars projects, from the first missions of the 1970s to the first colony. Additionally, Paris was fond of playing practical jokes, particularly on Tuvok. For example, he once reprogrammed in a variety of ways a holographic Vulcan monastery that Tuvok used such as dressing one of the central figures in sleepwear and changing the chants to Ferengi chants about profit. He even once reprogrammed all of systems Tuvok interacted with to say, "Live long and prosper," whenever he used them. In addition to these interests, he liked dogs and once told Janeway that he's always had a dog. I do hope you liked this video. Tom Paris was a really awesome character and I really enjoyed his jokes on the crew a lot. So what did you think about Tom? Let me know in the comments. Take care and have a great day. Good day, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Today's 10 interesting facts is on 7 of 9, or Annika Hansen. I find this person a very interesting character, so I am excited to see different facts about her. So let's get into it. Number 1. Annika was born in 2350 on stardate 25-4-79 at the Federation Tendara colony as the only daughter of exobiologists Magnus and Aaron Hansen. Number 2. During her childhood, she never visited Earth. Her favorite color growing up was red. At the age of 6, Annika once stayed with her Aunt Irene. Her favorite treats were strawberry tarts, which Irene used to coax Annika out of the guest room in which she locked herself. She was very strong-willed and did not hesitate to point out if the strawberries used to baking the tarts were not perfectly ripe. And at one point in her childhood, she wanted to become a ballerina. Number 3. Annika's parents were exobiologists, investigating the existence of the Borg. After a great deal of persuasion, the Federation granted the Hansens the use of the USS Raven, a small long-range craft, to aid them in their investigation. In 2353, they took Annika, then aged 3, along with them. They spent a good deal of the time aboard the Raven in search of the Borg. Annika celebrated her 3rd birthday aboard the ship. Number 4. Their research came to an abrupt end in 2356 when an ion storm struck the Raven. The ship sustained damage, including, most importantly, damage to the multi-adaptive shielding, which went offline for 13.2 seconds. This left them exposed long enough for the Borg to detect them and perceive them as a target for assimilation. The Hansens tried to evade pursuit by masking the Raven's warp trail, but the Borg still managed to pursue and find them. They and their daughter were promptly captured and assimilated near the Bumar space. Naturally, the experience was traumatizing to Annika. Number 5. Annika was placed in a maturation chamber, where the hive mind began to restructure her synaptic pathways and purge her individuality. She emerged as a Borg drone 5 years later, in 2361. The turmoil of having been forcibly assimilated replaced with order, and spent the next 13 years in the collective with the designation of 7 of 9. As a drone, she assisted in the assimilation of millions, from individuals to entire species. She personally assimilated many individuals from a variety of species including humans, Klingons, Ferengi, Bajorans, Bolians, Krenim, and Cardassians. Number 6. In early 2368, 7 of 9, along with 3 other drones and the Unimatrix, crash-landed on a planet in the Delta Quadrant. The other drones, who were assimilated as adults, began to regain their identities upon being severed from the Borg collective. But 7 was frightened as she knew nothing else but life as a drone. She forcibly linked the other drones together into a temporary collective in order to suppress their identities, and they were retrieved soon after. 7 of 9 remained a Borg drone until 2374 when she was liberated. Number 7. The Doctor, Voyager's holographic chief medical officer, was able to remove most of her implants and restore most of her human appearance. but her long-term assimilation meant that she had some parts that were vital to her survival, and they couldn't be removed. She also refused to be called by the name Annika Hansen, as 7 of 9 was the designation she had always known. But she accepted a shortened version, 7, at the suggestion of Captain Janeway. Number 8. 7's real first food after being severed from the Borg Collective was Kadra Cobb. She also developed a fondness for strawberries, left over from her childhood. Number 9. As a former drone, 7 had considerable superior physical characteristics over most humans. Her visual acuity was vastly superior due to her ocular implant, along with eidetic memory and superior physical strength for a healthy human woman her age. As for her regular human senses, they were more acute than the average humans as well. Her heart and respiratory system were completely reinforced. She was also much more resistant to injury and many forms of radiation, including chronoton and subnucleonic radiation that would quickly kill an ordinary human. With her Borg implants, she was also able to serve as a physical host to any holographic character, who then had full access to her biological senses. Her enhanced Borg physiology also had its downside, such as being prone to malfunctions or failures, or receiving unwanted transmissions from the Borg Queen or other Borg devices. Her powerful nanoprobes were highly sought after, and in the Ferengi market each sold for 6 bars of latinum. When she was once experimenting with the nature of individuality and intimate relationships, experiencing a host of strong emotions unfamiliar to her, her cortical node shut down as a fail-safe mechanism to deactivate drones who started to regain their emotions. Number 10. Sometime after Voyager returned from the Delta Quadrant, 7 joined the Fenris Rangers, a peacekeeping force that operated along the Romulan neutral zone. In 2386, a woman that 7 worked with at some point lured Icheb into an ambush while he was on a mission for the Rangers near Demanta. She arranged for him to be taken to the 7 Domes facility on Vergessen, where his implants were brutally removed from him without any anesthetic or even the small mercy of death. In anguish, 7, who considered Icheb as a son since their time on Voyager, arrived to rescue him. But she was too late. In unbearable pain, he asked 7 to end his life. Cradling him in her arms, she tearfully bid him farewell before she complied by fatally shooting him with her phaser. I hope you enjoyed this video of 7. She definitely was a good addition to the Voyager crew and made the show more interesting. What's your favorite 7 moment? Let me know in the comments section. Take care and have a great day. Good day, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today's video is about Tuvok from Star Trek Voyager. I really enjoyed his character and found it logical to have him there. So now, let's get into it. Number 1. Tuvok, son of Temeni, was born in 2264 on the Vulcanus lunar colony. As a teenager, he rebelled against the Vulcan ideal of logic and reasoning when he fell in love with a Trellian girl named Jara, the daughter of a Trellian diplomat stationed on Vulcan. Tuvok experienced Shan Halak, or love at first sight, and was willing to violate every tenet of Vulcan philosophy simply to be near her. Unfortunately, Jara did not return Tuvok's feelings, and Tuvok chose to leave her. He later spent several months in isolation studying with the Vulcan Master, where he learned to subdue his emotions. He had to survive in the Vulcan desert for 4 months with a ritual blade as his only possession, as part of a Tal-Oth ritual. Number 2. Tuvok entered Starfleet Academy in 2289 at the age of 25, but found it difficult to fit in. He found the egocentric nature of humans difficult to deal with, but endured it because it was the wish of his parents to enter Starfleet, and he felt obligated to fulfill their expectations. Number 3. After Tuvok graduated from Starfleet Academy in 2293, he was assigned as a junior science officer to the USS Excelsior under the command of Captain Sulu. He worked during the Gamma shift and shared common quarters on Deck 7 with Dimitri Valtain and 2 other officers on the same shift. 2 months later, Tuvok was present during the Excelsior's attempt to rescue James T. Kirk and Leonard McCoy from the Klingon penal colony Ruapenthe. This was despite a direct order from Starfleet that no rescue attempt must be tried. Tuvok protested to Captain Sulu about his breach of orders, but to no avail. Decades later, however, an older and wiser Tuvok determined that he had not necessarily been right either. Number 4. In the subsequent battle in the Azera Nebula with a Klingon battlecruiser, Valtain died in Tuvok's arms. An alien virus that Valtain was carrying transferred itself to Tuvok, and then disguised itself as a repressed memory engram. This virus later manifested itself in 2373, when Tuvok served aboard the Voyager, before being destroyed by the Doctor. Tuvok was also among those who spoke out against Spock's proposed alliance between Federation and the Klingon Empire. Number 5. After the Excelsior's 3-year mission in the Beta Quadrant ended, Tuvok resigned his commission on account of his dealings with humans. His experiences on the Excelsior were not pleasant. Humans, in Tuvok's view, believed that everyone in the galaxy should be like them, that all should share their sense of humor and their human values. His perceptions of humanity and of Starfleet were undoubtedly colored by the fact that he did not want to be there in the first place. Tuvok returned to Vulcan, where he taught archery science for several years at the Vulcan Institute for Defensive Arts. He then spent several years in seclusion by immersing himself in Kolinar. This was interrupted 6 years later by the onset of Pon farr. After his marriage to T'Pel in 2304 and the birth of their 4 children, Tuvok decided to return to Starfleet following a 50-year absence. Raising his own children made Tuvok realize what his parents had gone through and that he had not always made the right decisions when he was young. Number 6. Recognizing that there was much he could learn from other races, such as humans, Tuvok entered Starfleet again in 2349 and served as an ensign on the USS Wyoming. His service record reflected this as his first posting instead of his time on the Excelsior. Tuvok eventually served as an instructor for thousands of cadets during a 16-year tenure at Starfleet Academy, a role he has reassumed aboard Voyager in order to instruct Maquis crewmen in Starfleet protocols. He also served as one of the instructors to Icheb in his pursuits to join Starfleet. Tuvok first met Kathyrn Janeway in 2356. Tuvok dressed Janeway down in front of 3 Starfleet admirals for failing to observe proper tactical procedures during her first command, although this encounter bruised Janeway's human ego. But nevertheless, Tuvok was right, and from 2365 onward, Janeway came to rely on Tuvok's insightful and unfailing logic advice. During the mid-2360s, Tuvok was temporarily assigned to Jupiter Station, where he often wrote to Captain Janeway. Number 7. Lieutenant Tuvok was serving as Captain Kathyrn Janeway's security officer when in 2371 he was ordered to infiltrate the crew of the Maquis raider Valjean, commanded by former Starfleet officer Chakotay. Tuvok was still under cover on the Valjean sometime later when, while hiding from a Cardassian ship in the Badlands, the raider was hit with an energy wave which transported over 70,000 light-years to the other side of the galaxy in the Delta Quadrant. While looking for the missing raider, Voyager itself was hit by the energy wave and transported to the Delta Quadrant, reuniting Tuvok with his ship and captain, much to Chakotay's dismay, who had to face the fact that Tuvok had been a Federation spy all along. When their situation required that both of the crews of the Valjean and Voyager merge for the long journey back home, he became Captain Janeway's security and second officer. Number 8. When a transporter accident caused Tuvok to be combined with crewmate Neelix and a plant on a molecular level, forming a new individual, Tuvix. Tuvix possessed the memories of both men and had a mixture of the personalities. It took the Doctor over a month to find a method to restore Tuvok and Neelix to their original state. Number 9. In 2374, Tuvok was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant Commander by Captain Janeway. Tuvok later developed multiphasic shielding, which went into Voyager's multi-spatial probe and was later adapted for use in designing the Delta Flyer. By 2376, Tuvok had received 17 commendations for valor. Number 10. Tuvok was a prize-winning orchid breeder. He used grafting techniques on flowers from both Earth and Vulcan. Tuvok was proficient at the Vulcan lute player, and he would often play his lute while reciting Fowler's Journey to his youngest son. Tuvok's main pastime was the Vulcan game Chakotay, which he frequently played with Ensign Harry Kim. Tuvok also spent his spare time meditating, using the stars as a focal point, and instructed various members of the crew in this pursuit over the years. Besides his background in the sciences, he was an avid student and observer of many Alpha Quadrant martial arts, including Earth sumo wrestling. I do hope you liked this video. Tuvok was an interesting character and helped save Voyager on numerous occasions. So what did you like about Tuvok? Let me know in the comments. Consider subscribing to the channel and leave a like on this video. Thank you very much. Take care and have a great day. Good day, everyone. Today's video is on 10 interesting facts on Chakotay from Star Trek Voyager. I really wish they would have done more episodes that centered on Chakotay, but let's get into it. Number 1. Chakotay was born in 2329 on a Federation colony near the Cardassian demilitarized zone that had native tribe had moved to several generations earlier. Here he was raised by his father, Kolopak, who considered him a contrary from the beginning because he had come out of his mother upside down, as his father once remarked. Number 2. Chakotay also had a sister and a cousin who lived in Ohio. During an incident in 2373 that took Voyager to Earth in 1996, Chakotay considered looking up a few of his ancestors, noting that he knew one of his ancestors at that time who worked as a school teacher in Arizona. Being of Native American descent, Chakotay's tribe, mainly because of the intrusion of more technological societies, left Earth to find their own home on another planet near the Cardassian border. From an early age, his father tried to impart his values on Chakotay in many ways, such as taking him on hikes to nearby forested worlds of their ancestors. In 2344, he took Chakotay on a quest through the Central American rainforest looking for their fellow descendants of the ancient rubber tree people that had never left the forest. Chakotay also refused to hunt deer with his father. Number 3. By the time Chakotay was 15 years old, he had already set his sights on Starfleet and greatly surprised his father when he told him that he was going to leave the tribe to attend Starfleet Academy. His father disapproved of his son's decisions, but at the time was unable to convince him otherwise. Chakotay and his father were not on good terms when Kolopak was killed while defending his colony against the Cardassians. When the news reached Chakotay, he was unsure how to reconcile their differences and heal their old wounds. To honor his father's memory and to continue the fight in his name, Chakotay resigned from Starfleet and joined the Maquis. It was then that he took the mark, the tattoo on his forehead, in order to honor the memory of his father and to signify his Native American heritage. Number 4. In the years following his resignation from Starfleet, he not only joined the Maquis to fight the Cardassians, but he also finally began placing great faith in his spiritual background by taking pride in the stories and accomplishments of his people. He often embarked on vision quests to help guide his life and to commune with his father's spirit. He also used a medicine wheel to heal himself both spiritually and physically. Number 5. At the age of 15, Chakotay entered Starfleet Academy, sponsored by Captain Sulu. Chakotay misled the officer into believing he had Kolopak's permission to join. Chakotay possessed great piloting skills, and during his first year, he trained as a pilot in North America. He then went to Venus for a couple of months to learn how to handle atmospheric storms, and later dodged asteroids for a semester in the Sol System asteroid belt. He also became a proficient boxer at his light heavyweight level, with a record of 23 wins and 1 loss. The loss was to a Nausicaan with a mean right hook. His personal trainer was Academy groundsman Boothby. Number 6. After his father was killed in 2368, while defending their colony, Chakotay resisted the Cardassian takeover of his planet, as per the terms of the border treaty between Cardassia and the Federation. He refused to stand by and watch his people be displaced once again, as had happened on Earth hundreds of years ago. As such, he was one of the Maquis who were in the fight for principle, not mercenary gain or violent outlet. On March 3, 2368, he resigned from his position as an instructor in Starfleet Advanced Tactical Training by submitting his resignation to Starfleet. He was recruited in by the Maquis by his old friend Sveta. Number 7. After joining the Maquis, he became one of its leaders, and his cell became one of the most successful in resisting the Cardassians and Federation. His vessel, the Valjean, was his primary mode of space transportation. Among their various missions as Maquis included an instance where Chakotay, Torres, and Seska successfully disabled the computer core on a Cardassian frigate orbiting Bajor. This was accomplished when Seska modified an anti-proton beam to penetrate the frigate's shields and hull from an extremely close range. While trying to escape from a Cardassian warship commanded by Gully Vec in the Badlands, Chakotay and his crew, including Tuvok, Captain Janeway's security chief working undercover as a Maquis, were transported to the Delta Quadrant by the Caretaker's Array. In an attempt to locate the disappeared Maquis ship, USS Voyager followed them into the Badlands, becoming trapped 70,000 light-years away in the Delta Quadrant shortly after. Number 8. Following the destruction of his ship in the Delta Quadrant, Chakotay and his crew joined Voyager's crew as one Starfleet crew in order to find a way home. He was granted the provisional rank of commander and became Voyager's second-in-command. A man of great moral conviction and courage, Chakotay embraced Starfleet principles once again and served Captain Janeway as first officer, eventually being able to forge a meaningful friendship with her. His loyalty never wavered, and he helped keep the peace and establish cooperation and positive rapport between his Maquis and the Starfleet crew. His devotion to Voyager and Starfleet were strong. He even threatened to throw Seska and Jarvan into the brig when they said they would support him in a mutiny. When Tuvok wished to train a group of Maquis in order to bring them up to Starfleet standards, Chakotay forcefully persuaded them, after they initially resisted and wanted to do things the Maquis way. Number 9. Chakotay didn't use the holodeck often, but enjoyed reading instead. He occasionally took the time to embrace his artistic side, such as creations using colored sand while trapped on New Earth and carving of Native American symbols. Chakotay was a vegetarian. One of his favorite meals was mushroom soup. Some foods he hated were carrots and fried food because it upset his stomach, and he refused to eat pudding because he thought it was slimy. Chakotay preferred to avoid alcoholic beverages when possible, saying he preferred to stay in control. One of his favorite beverages was Antarian cider, that he kept a secret stash of it hidden in Cargo Bay 2. One of the many reasons he joined Starfleet was to pursue his interest in anthropology and paleontology. Number 10. Near the end of Voyager's time in the Delta Quadrant, he became romantically involved with Seven of Nine. They became very close during an away mission when they were stranded on a planet due to a shuttle crash. They discovered a primitive tribe known as the Ventu that helped them contact their ship. Chakotay returned to the Alpha Quadrant with the rest of the crew using a Borg transwarp hub. Admiral Janeway returned to the past to help her counterpart, Captain Janeway, defeat the Borg and return the ship sooner than the 23 years it originally took her. This saved the life of Seven, who had been killed on the original journey home, and helped Tuvok avoid a mental breakdown due to a neural disease. I do hope you liked the video about Chakotay. He's a very interesting character, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to watch our videos as they come out. So, take care and have a great day.
Good day, everyone. Today, we're going to go through 10 interesting facts on Kathyrn Janeway from Star Trek Voyager. Let me know if you like Janeway in the comments. Now, let's get into it.
Number 1.
Kathyrn Janeway was born on May 20th in Bloomington, Indiana on Earth. Her father was Admiral Edward Janeway, who passed away in 2358, and her mother was Gretchen Janeway, who is still alive in 2378. Kathyrn had one sister.
Number 2.
Kathyrn enjoyed tennis as a child, but gave it up in high school. She took it back up when in command of the USS Voyager. She also enjoyed skiing and pool.
Number 3.
In 2358, Kathyrn's father passed away by drowning under a polar ice cap on Tau Ceti Prime. Kathyrn was devastated. She fell into a terrible depression and spent months in bed, sleeping away her days. Her sister eventually forced her into the real world again.
Number 4.
During her lifetime, Janeway studied American Sign Language and the idioms of the Laron. She struggled to learn the basics of Klingonese.
Number 5.
When Janeway was a cadet in Starfleet Academy, she had a close relationship with Boothby, the chief custodian of the Starfleet Gardens, who brought fresh roses to her quarters each morning. Janeway also enjoyed spending time at a little coffee shop on Market Street known as the Night Owl. Her love of coffee and her late nights got her through many of her classes.
Number 6.
Janeway's first Starfleet posting was aboard the USS Albatani, under the command of Captain Owen Paris. She served as the chief science officer during the ship's participation in the Arius expedition. Janeway once revealed that at one point during her posting, she knocked out power to 6 decks by misaligning the ship's positronic relays.
Number 7.
When Janeway first met Tuvok in 2356, she was dressed down by him in front of 3 Starfleet admirals for failing to observe proper tactical procedures during her first command. Although it bruised her ego a bit, she did realize he was correct. From 2365 onward, Janeway and Tuvok became close friends.
Number 8.
In 2371, Janeway took command of the USS Voyager and received her first general order at Starfleet headquarters. She was to locate the missing Maquis vessel, the Valjean, which disappeared in the Badlands. While chasing the Valjean in the Badlands, both ships were engulfed by a displacement wave that hurled them 70,000 light-years in the far side of the galaxy, deep into the Delta Quadrant.
Number 9.
As a captain, Janeway was very committed to Starfleet protocol, resisting the urge to bend or break the Prime Directive throughout Voyager's trip back to Earth through the Delta Quadrant, despite the fact that she was decades from Starfleet Command and could have simply broken the rules and lied about it in her records. However, she often took action to help any species they encountered where Voyager could offer assistance without breaking the rules.
Number 10.
In 2378, Janeway was able to return to Earth with the assistance of Vice Admiral Kathyrn Janeway from the early 25th century of an alternate timeline. Upon the return of Voyager to the Alpha Quadrant, Janeway was promoted to the rank of Vice Admiral and given an assignment at Starfleet Command. In 2379, she ordered Captain Picard and the USS Enterprise on a diplomatic mission to Romulus. Thanks for watching the video on Kathyrn Janeway. I hope you liked it. I enjoyed her character in Voyager. She wasn't perfect, but what captain is? Let me know which captain you like the most. Take care and have an awesome day.
Good day, everyone. Today's 10 interesting facts is on the USS Voyager from Star Trek Voyager. I liked the series when it came out, and I still do today. So, let's get into this video. Number 1. The USS Voyager, NCC 74656, was constructed at the Utopia Planitia Fleet Yards, orbiting Mars. It was launched from Earth Station McKinley on stardate 48038.5 in 2371. Number 2. Voyager was one of the earliest Intrepid-class starships constructed, and it featured a number of technological innovations that had become available in the 2370s. Bioneural circuitry, variable geometry warp nacelles, an emergency medical holographic program were only a few of Voyager's notable technical advancements. The vessel was also the first to test the Class 9 warp drive in deep space. Number 3. With 15 decks, a length of 343 meters, a crew complement capacity of approximately 160, and weighing in at 700,000 metric tons, Voyager was only about half the size of the Galaxy-class starships introduced in the 2350s. However, what the Intrepid-class starship lacked in physical size, she made up with in technological advancements. Voyager boasted some of the most advanced sensor equipment in the Federation fleet, and was capable of reaching a sustainable cruise velocity of warp factor 9.975. She was further equipped with bioneural circuitry that contained gel packs with bioneural cells that organized information more efficiently and sped up response time. Its computer processor was capable of access to 47 million data channels at once, transluminal processing at 575 trillion calculations per nanosecond, and operational temperature margins from 10 Kelvin to 1790 Kelvin. The ship had 256 rooms plus the holodeck. Number 4. Like many Federation starships of its time, Voyager was armed with phasers and Type 6 photon torpedoes and protected by a deflector shield system. The vessel's torpedo launchers were compatible with quantum torpedoes as well, with some modifications. Additionally, Voyager carried spatial charges and tri-cobalt devices, the latter of which was not normally carried on Starfleet vessels at the time. Number 5. After leaving Deep Space Nine and entering the Badlands, Voyager was swept 70,000 light-years into the Delta Quadrant, where it discovered Chakotay's missing Maquis vessel, the Valjean, which had experienced a similar fate on stardate 48307.5. Voyager had been declared officially lost by 2373. Number 6. Voyager had earned a reputation in the 29th century for being involved in a number of temporal incidences. One Starfleet officer of the era made note of how often the vessel showed up on the USS Relativity temporal sensors. The vessel's captain was even driven to madness due to Voyager's incursions. Number 7. In 2373, Voyager was attacked by a 29th century Federation vessel under the command of Captain Braxton. The ensuing battle led Voyager and the time ship to be pulled into the 20th century, with Voyager arriving in orbit of Earth in 1996, and Braxton arriving approximately 30 years earlier. During this time, Voyager's EMH acquired the mobile emitter that allowed him to exist outside of just sickbay, and the holodeck, which was equipped with holo emitters. Another version of Braxton detected Voyager in 1996 and returned him to the 24th century Delta Quadrant. Number 8. Thanks to Barclay's efforts, contact with Voyager was re-established in late 2376, and regular contact was maintained for the duration of the vessel's journey. Milestones included the ability to send monthly transmissions and eventually establish two-way live visual communication at a distance of 30,000 light years, even if only it was 11 minutes a day. Number 9. In 2374, following the conclusion of the war between Borg and Species 8472, Kes began to experience after effects following her communications with the aliens. She began evolving towards a higher state of being, but the process proved to be dangerous to Voyager, so she decided to leave to protect the ship. As her final gift to the Voyager crew, Kes propelled the ship over 9,500 light years closer to Earth, eliminating 10 years off the crew's journey. Later, in 2374, 7 of 9 installed the new astrometrics lab in Voyager. Because of the Borg's more advanced technology and detailed knowledge of the Delta Quadrant, 7 plotted a faster course back to Earth. She commented that the new course would trim 5 years off their journey. In early 2375, Voyager entered an unknown area of space known as the Void. The region contained no star systems and high levels of theta radiation, did not allow light from any stars beyond the area to be seen from within. A spatial vortex leading to the other side of this region cut 2 years and 2,500 light years off Voyager's journey. Captain Janeway estimated that avoiding conflicts with the Borg added 2 years onto the crew's journey. However, in mid-2375, the crew stole a transwarp core from a Borg sphere that allowed Voyager to travel 20,000 light years, which cut 15 years off of Voyager's trip home. In 2376, Voyager used a catapult constructed by an alien known as Tash to cut 3 years off their journey home. And in 2378, with the help of Admiral Janeway, the Voyager crew used a Borg transwarp hub to get back to Earth. Number 10. Shortly before the vessel's return to the Alpha Quadrant in 2378, Voyager was upgraded with ablative generators and transphasic torpedoes, both of which were brought back in time by a future version of Kathyrn Janeway from the year 2404. These new systems drastically increased Voyager's combat capabilities against the Borg. Borg weapons had a difficult time penetrating the hull armor, and entire Borg cubes were destroyed with only 1 or 2 transphasic torpedoes each. I hope you liked the video today. Feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel to get more videos as they come out. Have an awesome day.